holiday season, you might be looking for nutritious, convenient meals to keep you energized on jam-packed days. Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal delivery service, can help you fuel up for brekkie, lunch, or dinner with chef-prepared, dietitian-approved, ready-to-eat meals delivered straight to your door. They just drop them at your door, people. You'll save time and eat well. You'll stay on track with your healthy lifestyle while taking all of your holiday to-dos in stride with good meals in the tum-tum. If you're too busy with all this stuff, these meals are easy to get done. They taste great. All you've got to do is head over to factormeals.com/expandingreality50 and use code expandingreality50 to get 50% off. That's code expandingreality50 at factormeals.com/expandingreality50 to get 50% off.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.
A choice right now, between fear and love. It's just a rock.
Out of the dark night of ignorance and into the shining light of truth.
Expounding reality. A population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are.
There's a level of reality where everything dissolves into an ocean of energy.
We empower our experience by insisting on our authenticity.
That's very profound. Very.
Expanding reality.
Welcome to Expanding Reality. I am your host, Brandon Thomas. On this episode, guys, a very special one. Lester Velez joins us. He is the chairman and co-founder of OPUS, which we do talk all about. That is an acronym, of course, that stands for the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support. It's incredible. So his story about when he was a part of MUFON and then had all these abduction cases come in, and they were just like, here, you take it. And he was like, okay, well, I'll just start OPUS. And it's incredible. So he also wrote a book, which we talk quite a bit about, which of course are linked down in the show notes, The Unknown Other and the Existential Proposition of Alien Contact. It's got a foreword by Linda Moulton Howe, which is really, really cool. So Lester is fascinating. On this episode, guys, we talk not only about his book, but all of the awesome things contained within. He covers some incredible topics, specific UFO cases that he talks about that are detailed incredibly well in the book, as well as we go over some incredible experiences, implants, the concept of hybridization. We really go for it on this one, guys, but with Lester, you can do that. So all the ways to find him will be linked down in the show notes, so make sure you take advantage of that, as well as all the offerings that OPUS has. So there's a support page online. There's all sorts of very interesting things. So all of that is linked down in the show notes, guys. Down there as well, if you'd like to expand your experience with us here on the show, you can do so at expandingrealitypodcast.com. So make sure you check that as well. Other than that, let's get to this, because Lester is awesome. So without any further ado, here is Lester Velez. All right, ladies and gentlemen, extremely excited for this incredible episode with Lester Velez. You, of course, wrote an amazing book, The Unknown Other, an Existential Proposition of the Alien Contact, and it is so cool. This is a wonderful book. I just wanted to tell you how impressed I was with your writing style and with all the information that you had in there. So, before we get launching into this, do you mind just telling my audience a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah, I was a graduate at the University of Vermont and, subsequently got married, or actually I was in the service and then got married and eventually wound my way out to California in 1985. And I picked up the newspaper one day and Stanton Friedman was going to talk about UFOs and the government cover-up. And so at San Jose City College. And I went there expecting to see, a handful of people, but the auditorium was packed. He gave one of his inimitable, lectures. And on the way out, I was pretty jazzed at that point. And MUFON had a table in the foyer and hawking their monthly journal. And so I decided to get that. And after a while, it, wasn't enough for me. And I became a field investigator. And that's when things got really interesting, because most of the cases that I got involved with, not only sightings, but they were abduction type cases. And so that's when, as I say, things got really interesting for me. And working with these people and understanding that they needed some type of help. And but I think the story has to even go back further. When I was 11 years old, I saw something. This is when I lived in Connecticut. One October evening, and this object was hovering over a tree line and not making a sound, and just slowly moved off into the distance. And it was an oval whitish type object. And of course, it scared the hell out of me. And I ran into the house. And by the time I got there into the house to drag my father out and finally convince him to do so, it was gone. And he said, well, it's probably a beacon of light reflecting off a cloud. And I didn't quite buy that. And decided to go to the library and look for some books on UFOs. And I did. I found George Adamski's books. And so that set me on a path for quite a while until I got into high school, and girls became a little bit more interesting to me. And, eventually, as I say, went off to college, the University of Vermont, and joined the ROTC, became a field artillery officer. And as I said, eventually got married, had a couple of kids, and moved out to California. So that's kind of the intro. And in working with these people, they asked me, did I know of other people having similar experiences? And I said, yes, I do. So as it turned out, I began facilitating a support group in San Jose. And some of the stories that I heard and the information that came across was incredible. Nothing I had read up to that point was as dramatic and as compelling as what these people were telling me. And so some of the cases that I got involved with, one particular case was this couple. And they were picnicking in a state park just north of Santa Cruz. And they were coming out of the park. It was almost dusk. And they noticed this light over the ocean. And this light got bigger and bigger, and until it was literally over their heads. And it turned out to be a triangular craft about the size of a small Learjet. And it continued to go into a canyon behind them. And they noticed another light over the ocean. And this light got bigger and bigger, the same scenario, until it was over their heads. And it was the same type of a craft. And the first one, they felt they were looking at it. But the second one, they felt it was looking at them, and they became frightened. And they backed up underneath a big old pine tree that was up there. And so this happened 5 more times. There was a total of 7 craft that were in this canyon. And they were just sitting there horizontally, one next to the other, kind of doing that butterfly action that UFOs tend to do. And then all of a sudden, the whole group went up in a vertical position, and they went around a corner, but there was no corner to go around. It was just like they went into another dimension. Well, needless to say, at that point, they started to leave the park. And they felt very unusual at that point. They felt like they were on automatic pilot, like they were floating down out of the park. in this particular area, and I was out there with them actually looking at this area, is dark during the day because of the trees and the vegetation, and it's rocky. And in order to navigate that during the day is even difficult, let alone at night. And so they somehow just, as I said, floated down through there. And that's the last thing they remember until 3 hours later, ending up in a restaurant in a town called Pescadero, which is only 5 to 10 minutes away from the park. And so it would not take them 3 hours, but they had no recollection whatsoever of what had happened to them. And they ended up coming to the support group meeting, and they had both developed a rash on their body in the groin area. And right away, people in the support group said, well, was it poison ivy or poison oak? Because there's a lot of poison oak up in that park. And they had gone to a doctor, and the doctor said, no, it's not poison ivy or oak. I'm not sure what it is. And then they had gone to another doctor, and he posited the fact that, well, perhaps it's some internal, reaction to something. But I don't know what it could possibly be. So they had taken a picture, as I said, and they showed it around to the group. And almost without exception, each member of the group said that they had a similar rash at one time or another. And one of the people in the group said, well, I know what that's from. And of course, we were, kind of skeptical about that. But what came out of this person's mouth blew us away, because what they had said was that this was a reaction to the fluid that they dip you in when they bring you on board the craft to sanitize you.
But only in that one particular area, in the groin area?
Yeah. And perhaps because of being in that area, it can be more moist or something, and perhaps retain some of that fluid. It's unusual. There's no question about it. But the explanation of what it was mind blowing. It's like, oh, okay, I never heard that before. That's a first.
Well, it's incredibly remarkable, because if you think about it, these non-human entities, whatever they are, if they are doing this and abducting and dipping us into some sort of sanitizer, whatever material that's made out of, all humans, some of us have peanut allergies. Some of us are allergic to different detergents. So you would think that it's interesting that they could get such a ubiquitous compound that would be okay for everyone, with maybe the result being like this slight rash. They're like, okay, we've tried everything in the universe. It turns out we could do this, but it's just a little bit of an irritating rash, so we're just going to go with that formula. Now, Let me ask you, were the other people in the group that admitted to having a similar rash, did that all occur in the same location, or were there different areas of the body?
There were some different areas, some around the neck area, some near the armpits. Some still in the upper thigh area. So yeah, it probably depended upon the person, how they reacted and where it was most prevalent for them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it's kind of like you picture like cows, in a cattle chute getting flea dipped or something, where they jump through that bath, and it's kind of like maybe that's part of the process. It's interesting, but it makes sense. But also it raises other questions, like why do they need to sanitize us for their health, or are they protecting us from what's on the craft?
That's a good question. I have no answer for that. It's certainly a possibility of going both ways. That protecting themselves from whatever we have. Although that's, to me, that's why if I was an alien, that I would, if I was bringing somebody, like we go out to outer space and we bring stuff back, and we make sure it's confined or in a vacuum sealed object, and it's handled very carefully. Well, I think the same thing is going on with these aliens, is that they're trying to make sure that they're not bringing something on board rather than them giving something to us. I don't think they worry about that.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't. It's kind of like, and we talk about this quite a bit about the abduction phenomena. It's kind of the motivation behind it, and how do those entities view us? Like, are we just like some sort of experiment or some sort of prison planet idea where they can just come on in and just do whatever the hell they want and be okay with it? Because that was, I guess, going to lead me to my next question about this particularly. Have any humans ever gotten some sort of space bug, like some space virus from being taken on a UFO, and they were, like you said, they didn't really have any regards for our health or safety. But it's interesting also that stuff isn't more prevalent, that you don't have just like a bunch of space bacteria running around. It may, I don't know, prove that the universe is pretty ubiquitous as far as when it comes to contaminants. Maybe there's some stuff that's pretty universal,
Well, I think that there definitely are physical effects that occur from people coming into contact, mostly most likely due to microwave energy, even X-ray and gamma ray energy that is part of the mechanism of these saucers, if you will. So, and in the latest book, Skinwalkers at the Pentagon, they talk about a lot of different diseases that have occurred after contact, especially with orbs coming into the bodies of people. Yeah, that was an interesting revelation. And one of the studies that we just finished the first phase of the Omega-4 study, where we went out to therapists. What people are seeing are grays first. That's still number one. It's and I think one of our discussions we had that when we were on that panel, Brandon, we talked about the grays being like an iPhone. Every Mantid or Nordic goes out to this store in the universe and picks up a gray to go get us, because they don't want to get involved with the pickup and the return of the entities. But the orbs are the number two thing that's most now cited by experiencers. And then interdimensional beings, and then poltergeist, ghosts. So it's and I think that this shows that all of this paranormal stuff is connected. It's totally connected, and
could not agree more. Yeah, that's kind of the conclusion we're all drawing as well. Is that it's just something? It's all the same damn thing, whatever it is, or it's connected in some way for sure.
Yeah. And you said you had Peniston on your show here recently.
Yes.
And the fact that these entities were us coming back from 40,000 years in the future, that's mind blowing right there.
That's
and
fun,
why
right?
are they coming back? Because they screwed up and they needed to collect material to take back. It's an interesting thought, because people always ask, well, is it extraterrestrial? Is it interdimensional? Is it time travelers? Is it our military? Well, I think it's all the above. Whatever you can possibly think of.
I
is
agree.
what it is.
I completely agree with that. And there was an interesting thing I brought up too, Jim, as well, when I had him on, about a friend of mine named Mira Taylor. She has a really interesting perspective, and she's real zoom out, big picture. And she kind of follows a more spiritual aligned path with it, with the idea, which would be that there's nothing here but you. Okay, it goes the idea spiritually. Okay, so this means that all entities, anything paranormal, all of that stuff is you, or a part of you on some level. You're just an individuated piece of consciousness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to the idea of the abduction phenomena, UFOs, aliens, all of that stuff, let's say perhaps, because there's been a couple of different things, and I'd love to talk to you about this, is that some people say that so one of the ideas goes is that whenever you look at abduction cases or visitation cases or contact, especially in a structure, a home, where people are taken out, that these entities, whatever they are, seem to phase right through the wall or the window or solid objects, roofs at sometimes. It doesn't seem to be like physical barriers for us are not for them. So one of the interesting ideas is that perhaps they take your astral body and leave your physical body behind, which would kind of call into question the dip that we need to do. Like, why would they need to sanitize your your
astral body?
Your astral body, right?
Right.
But there could be some other things about that, though. But one of the interesting things is perhaps if they take your astral body, maybe the way that they present themselves as these craft, maybe it's just an apparatus to go within you. Have you ever seen that movie Inner Space? With Martin Short, I think. It was an old movie. It was back in the either 90s or 80s anyway. But they basically take a machine, a big submarine-looking thing, and they shrink it. And they put it into a bloodstream. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps it's something like that, and you go within yourself. That's where you're being abducted to. And these entities are part of you that are kind of a mechanism in which it buffers the experience a little bit to where it's not as jarring because you think that you're going on a craft. And we have these, sightings everywhere. That could be what sightings are. They just float around everywhere. And perhaps, it's just one of those ideas. It's pretty interesting. What do you think?
And I think that in my book, the story that Adam tells, which is one of the first in the book, talks about breaking down the structure, of the physical body in such a way that it can go through walls, go through windows, or what have you, and then being reassembled. Okay, so that's another way to look at it. I think the astral body thing is absolutely legitimate. Because of the way things happen. But I think it could be a multitude of different ways that these entities are interacting with us, whether it's disassembling our atoms and reassembling them like, the transporter.
Yes.
Exactly. That thing goes through anything, and then you have the astral body scenario, which I think is valid as well. We just don't have definitive answers to this stuff. That's the problem.
We don't. And it seems like there's some ubiquitous cases to where there's some similarities that occur, but also there are other cases to where they take your astral body or your physical body, or there's missing time or there's not. Or like Dr. Roger Lear, there's implants, which you do talk about in your book. These kind of things are very interesting, that there are artifacts that people physically bring back from having an experience such as transmuting through a wall. That should be enough. But no, they, introduce you to some hybrid child. And I want to talk about hybridization with you as well, which you do cover very well in your book. So it is interesting, though, the different variety of phenomena, the flavor that they come in, the variety of craft, the variety of entities. We know that there are some commonalities like the Greys, and we did talk about that on that panel. So that's how you and I met, by the way, everybody. I'll go ahead and link the conversation that we had on Deep Share, Andy Rouse's podcast. He put together a wonderful panel, and it's called The Witness. And so I will go ahead and link that down there if you guys want to go check that out, to make sure you do that. And so on there, though, we were talking about all these different scenarios. And so one of the more interesting ones is the commonalities, but also the differences and the uniqueness of it. So it seems like this is a very personal experience for folks, that there hasn't been like mass abductions. You hear about Project Serpo and stuff like that. That's more of a voluntary thing if you follow the narrative on it. But mainly it's couples. It's a couple of people. What's the most amount of people that you can think of that have been abducted or taken at one time?
Yeah, I know that Bud Hopkins, way back when there, had a group, a couple of hundred people that got abducted, that he got involved with. I personally have only had 2 people at a time. This case that I just mentioned to you earlier, but it's mostly one-on-one type of a scenario. It is rare to have larger numbers of people disappear, but it's not unheard of. As I said, this case that Bud had gotten involved in, I can't remember the details of it. I think it was down in South Carolina someplace, and they were in a park or something, and then just all of a sudden disappeared. And then, of course, Terry Lovelace, he and his buddy got taken, and that's a hell of a story right there. And Terry, by the way, is on our advisory panel for OPUS, and is along with Linda Moulton Howe, Melinda Leslie, and Yvonne Smith. So we're very lucky to have those people involved with us as well. But yeah, there's so many facets of this phenomena, and you can look at it from a psychological point of view. You can look at it from a physics standpoint. It needs to be looked at by all aspects. And that's why we need more scientists involved in looking at this phenomena. And, God bless old Lou Elizondo for sticking his neck out and trying to, get this whole thing going. And, some people talk about the fact that, well, he shouldn't be doing it the way he's doing it. But I think the only way you're going to get the attention of the government is to say it's a threat. It's a possible threat.
Yep.
Because then you'll get money. Then you'll get money. Yeah.
Yeah, you did have Linda Moulton Howe wrote the foreword for the book. I mean, you have some heavy hitters and some bangers in here, man, and you just discussed some wonderful things. So, of course, guys, the Unknown Other will be linked down in the show notes. Make sure that you guys check that out for more on what we're talking about here. So you are the chairman and co-founder of OPUS. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. So the story continues. After I started facilitating the support group, I was written up in the Monterey Coast Weekly paper about the things that I've been doing for MUFON, investigating cases. And there was a woman that was also written up in that same article, and her name was Carol Austin. She's since passed away. And so she contacted me and said, I'd like to understand what's going on with my brain waves when I'm in contact with these off-earthly entities. And I kind of sat there kind of scratching my head. That's why I don't have a whole lot of hair. So anyway, I said, well, okay, that's interesting. And then she said she was working with an emergency room doctor down in Carmel. And so I had a doctor friend by the name of Eugene Lipson, who was very interested in connecting with other doctors that were interested in the phenomena. And so I called him up and I said, hey, Gene, let's go down and see this lady and see what we can find out. And so we did. We went down there one Saturday afternoon. And as we walked in, there was a picture on the wall. And it was her standing on the back of a fairly good sized boat. And I said, well, what's this all about? And she says, oh, yeah, I was helping these treasure hunters. And I said, where? And she said, in the Caribbean. I said, oh, how were you helping them? And she says, well, I was in contact with the captain of the galleon that had gone down.
No way. This is brilliant. Why don't more people use mediums to find treasure? Oh my God, good call.
So anyway, we find out that after a near-death experience, she became very psychic. And when, and this was something that the rest of the afternoon, she was telling us stuff about ourselves that there was no possible way. I had never met her before that. She certainly didn't know Gene. And we came away from that afternoon just blown away. We said, how can we possibly help a person like this?
Yeah.
And that became how, OPUS was hatched that afternoon at a hamburger joint, saying, okay, we got to put an organization together. And so in 1994, the Organization for Paranormal Understanding and Support was officially recognized by the IRS as a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And that always cracks me up that the IRS and the paranormal go together.
They're going to get theirs, you know?
Yeah.
In this life or the next, they'll get theirs.
Yeah. And anyway, so we put together a group of people that I talk about in the book, who were the initial group that we got together, and really good people. And we put our mission statement together, and you can see all of that information on our website at opusnetwork.org. And basically, very simply put, the mission is to help people having paranormal experiences, and that covers a lot of area. The paranormal. You could have spiritual awakening, poltergeist activity, certainly UFO, abduction type cases. And as it turns out, for whatever reason, we have continued to get the majority of cases centered around abductions and, experiencers coming to us. I'll get 2 to 3 a week at minimum, people looking for help. And most of the time they're looking to get put into our online support group, which is, I think, has proven to be so beneficial for people because they can talk to other people having similar experiences. And so this is, as I said, online. It's totally confidential. You have to go to our site, request support. There's a support button there, and you click on that, and we ask you to fill out a short little form. And then either I get it or another member of our organization gets it, and we do a little triage. And then we, either you want to go in. Sometimes they're looking for professional help, and most of the time they're looking for hypnotherapists. And so we have a resource list of hypnotherapists that we can, utilize to point them, in the right direction. And that seems to, be working out very well. And so the big thing for us right now, as far as what we're trying to do in the future, is to get the word out, in a bigger way and in more areas. And shows like yours, Brandon, are very important to us because, you talk about the book. And by the way, all proceeds of the sale of the book go directly to Opus. I don't get a dime. And that's, that's my contribution to the cause here, trying to make sure that we're funded. We can continue to do what we do because, of course, it takes money, to run a website, and none of this is free. And so we do have to raise some funds, but it's all tax deductible if people donate because we're a nonprofit organization. Anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell, what we're doing. And, we have a Facebook presence. We have a YouTube presence. And we're now talking about getting involved with Instagram and even maybe TikTok. We just had a discussion about that the other night, so we'll see where that goes. But anyway, the interesting thing, you hit it, and I wanted to talk about this, is reincarnation, because in the book, Adam talks about reincarnation, and one of the things that happened at a support group meeting was that a person said, "Well, I've seen you before." And I said, "Really? Where? At a UFO conference? A grocery store?" And he says, "No, I saw you on board a craft." Oh. I said, "Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting." So I kind of blew it off. And then it was probably a year and a half, 2 years later, somebody totally different in the support group says, "I've seen you before." I said, "Really? UFO conference, grocery store, gas station?" No. You were on a craft, you were sitting on this bench naked, and you were freaking out, and they told me to go over to you and calm you down.
Shut up.
Well, so at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to go get regressed. And I had 3 separate regressions, 3 different people, and could not find out anything with regard to alien contact. But I had multiple past lives, and they all came up with past lives for me. And so later on, somebody said, you know what? You might have been abducted in a past life.
Yes.
Yes. And I think that can be totally possible. Maybe because people ask you, why are you involved in all this? I said, well, you got to go back to when I was 11 years old and I saw this. I got really interested. And then, all these things fell into place, all these synchronicities, if you will, falling in place. And when I've traveled around the country in my previous, job before I retired, I was basically traveling around the country all the time. And it was interesting how I would always seem to show up and end up in places that had significant sightings or, abductions or something like that. And it's like, well, I'm a little bit late because this happened, but why am I here? It's just phenomenal how this all, as you say, I think earlier, talked about synchronicities.
Dude, that is crazy. I've never even thought of that before. But of course, if you have multiple lives and you can recall those past lives, you'd be able to recall if you were abducted or not in those past lives. But what's interesting is that because there was no abduction that you could recall under hypnosis in this life, but other people, more than one, independently of each other, have said that they have seen you specifically. Now, did they say you in the body that you're in now, or they just recognized you, like your energy?
I don't know the answer to that. I assumed it was in this body, but I never even thought of asking that question.
What'd be crazy though is if you appeared the way that you do now to people that you meet in this life,
right,
all of their lives. Like they can recognize you because the way that you present yourself in a way that they can recognize in this life presents itself that way in their recall of their past life memories or any memories that they have. That's crazy.
That's a conundrum. Who knows? And as you talk about this, it's like, yeah, there are questions to be asked, but that was so long ago now in the early 90s. I don't even remember who I was talking to back then.
Yeah, you're like Mad TV was on TV. What's crazy about this too is if you think about it, and then you can, because we apply a lot of different filters here. A lot of it's spiritual. We look at a lot of different things. So one of the things that I was thinking about whenever you talk about this you're not necessarily not the entity that's abducting you. So let's say, for instance, that you start this journey, and I think this place is way more magical and mysterious than we give it credit for a lot of times. So let's say one of the possibilities could be, just as a fun thought experiment, that perhaps you are the entities and you are all of your incarnations. So maybe you as a higher spiritual being or as a higher being manifested in this way as one of these beings perhaps, can come check on the individuated pieces of you and maybe come fix some things and do this throughout timelines because time doesn't necessarily exist, right? Just from our linear perspective, we need that.
Right.
But you could be actually your own like spirit guides, your own aliens that come down, or non-human intelligences that come down, abduct you, fix stuff on you, or correct a timeline perhaps, and then send you back out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I've been told in the past that I was a commander of a Palladian ship.
Cool.
And it's like, okay, again, I have no recollection of that, but is that a possibility?
Oh, yes. Of course, Lester. Of course, it's a possibility, brother. And it's even more interesting, too, because maybe there's only a certain set of characters that you interact with in a lifetime, And so perhaps in every lifetime, you kind of run around with these batch of folks, and some of the memories may overlap a little bit, or there's kind of a fuzz or a haze to where they could be remembering something from a past life where you were the commander of a Pleiadian ship, and then maybe they're getting a little too close to their higher selves, maybe they're getting too close to kind of figuring something out, and then it's kind of, I don't know, dialed back or governed back a little bit so that there's still a good amount of mystery, which that alone would ask way more questions, right?
There are so many cases where people are reincarnated and they believe they're a certain person and they can talk about various things. I heard this one case of a person that had missing fingers when they were born, and part of a toe that was missing. And when they grew up, they believed that they were this particular person. And as it turned out, this person they were able to track down who this person was, in this previous, had obviously passed away. But they had missing fingers in exactly the same place, and the toe was missing in exactly the same place as this person that was born. And the person had these recollections of this person. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, not only have you remembrances, but then physical aspects. And another person was shot in a previous lifetime, and then this other person shows up with a wound, obviously, just like a gunshot wound in the exact same place.
Did you hear of this so many in reincarnation accounts where kids, there's a very famous one where a child, I believe in Russia somewhere, a small village could recall that he was murdered and buried under some tree in a town not too far away, but that he'd never been to. So he was finally so adamant about it, I believe that they just took him out to the tree a couple towns away that, again, he'd never been to. And he said, yeah, dig right here. And it's in the middle of a huge field, nothing around, ground undisturbed. They dig up a body that ended up dying exactly the same way the kid said that it did, and ended up being the name of the person that he said that they did. And these sort of trace evidence marks or birthmarks, I hear birthmarks a lot in these cases, to where they will correspond exactly, size, placement, everything, to a wound that they can recall of how they died in a past life.
Yeah, that's the thing that's so remarkable. And psychics' ability to not only go back in the past, but in the present, but the future.
Yes.
And, matter of fact, one of the people that I interviewed that's on our OPUS website is Patricia Mona, who's a psychic out of Calgary, Canada. And she was working with a woman, and it hit her while they were having the session that she felt that her son was in trouble, and that the mother needed to be very careful and watch the child, because there was a possibility that he might commit suicide. And so the mother just basically kind of blew it off, didn't believe it, and came back after a month or so to the next session that she was having with her, and found out that in fact the son did commit suicide.
Oh. Jesus. I mean, it's stuff like that. And another interesting thing that was pointed out to me about past lives is we refer to them as past lives because they happened in our history's past from our linear perspective. But another great way to put it, and kind of one that'll blow your mind even more, is that they're simultaneous lives. So you're living all of these at the same time, that there is no past, present, and future, just from our, again, perspective. So that's even trippier. And then when you talk about like ancestor healing and stuff, this concept of, and it ties into scientifically quantum entanglement, to where if something happens to one particle, it affects the other over distances, time, it doesn't matter. It's instantaneous, right? That spooky action at a distance, as Einstein called it. But if that's the case, then you could affect lives that you're living now that we consider past lives or future lives. That's one of the explanations of why psychics are able to tap into the future and stuff like that. Like Psychic Warrior, of course, the remote viewing program, that was something that they were able to do. It was look at Mars like millions of years ago. It's crazy to me, dude. How disorienting is that?
Well, you should watch some of the latest Star Trek, Discovery. They are time traveling and doing all kinds of crazy things, assembling, disassembling bodies, and So, I think that's our future is there is no such thing as the future, as you said. It's all here now. And that's how I think that's how psychics are able to tap into this thing, is that they can just look here and everything is presented to them for some way, somehow. and they talk about, like Gary Nolan and Kate Green talk about the fact that, well, that connection between the caudate and the putamen are there's a lot more connections in people that have psychic abilities. And so there's a physical aspect to it as well. And then, these people are also seem to be, being able to transmit or to receive messages from whoever, whether it's non-human intelligences, just like Carol Austin was doing, when we went down there to talk with her. You talk about a rabbit hole. You go down this rabbit hole, and there's just all kinds of possibilities. Alice in Wonderland has nothing.
That hole's pretty damn deep.
Yeah.
And one thing that I do find very, very interesting is whenever you start talking about past, present, future, all of that stuff, it's interesting, though, to psychic mediums especially, that there's physical differences with them. They have extra connectivity, as you said. So would there be a, I guess, augmentation that one human could undergo eventually, do you think, that would give them these gifts or abilities, or their ability to tap in?
I think that would be pretty tricky because, you're going deep into the brain to do something like that. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some type of a chip that could be developed that could do the same thing. But I think it's probably pretty far off, and I think I had an Omni magazine. I don't know if you remember that series way back when, Omni magazine. It was a real forward-looking magazine. They talked about all kinds of things. They talked about inserting chips in the back of the brain to, being able to speak a language like instantaneously, or being a math whiz just by inserting a chip. And they're talking about doing that right now. I mean, that's a reality. And that was 30 years ago that this magazine was talking about that. So where the hell are we going to be in another 30 years? It's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. It's very interesting. And I think Neuralink is one of those things. That's one of those deals where, Elon Musk wants to throw a chip in your head.
Right.
And, this is jokingly, we have talked about that nobody's actually going to go to Mars. So you're going to have to be required to put this chip in your head. But really, they're going to just tell you that you went to Mars, like some total recall shit. And you actually don't go. It's going to be a lot cheaper just to throw chips in people's heads and sedate them for, a year than it would be to actually send people up there, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's an interesting idea. And then, of course, when you talk about people who have had near-death experiences that come back, one of those things that the chips that you talked about, it seems like they're mimicking or attempting to mimic natural phenomena of people who come back from near-death experiences and can play drums or speak fluent Mandarin or, play the piano like crazy, and they've never been able to do that in their entire life. So it's like an automatic skill upgrade and upload. It's very interesting, man.
Yeah. I forget who did that, where they disabled the left part of the brain, and in some way, shape, or form, and then what was the right brain took over, and these people were able to play the violin like it was going out of style, and various other skills. So there is a way to do that, become a savant, if you will, and by disabling certain parts of the brain, which is the case with these people that have, that condition. There's so much to this thing, and you just every time you talk to another person, there's another aspect that pops in there, and you need to dig around. I mean, I think it's the University of South Carolina that has basically a whole group of people that are looking at the paranormal now. And let's see, I've got a book. Oh yeah, here it is. Hold on a second.
Sure.
Let me get it. This is if I can get. Let's see if I can get this here. I've got my background on here, and it's not a green screen, so I don't know if you can see it. Anyway, this. Okay, here we go. It's called.
Tilted just a little. There you go. All right.
Yeah. Indestructible Mind, or the Irreducible Mind.
Yeah.
Irreducible Mind. This thing is like 3 inches thick, and it's toward the psychology for the 21st century by Edward E. Kelly and Emily Kelly, his wife, actually. And they talk about all of this psychic stuff and cases that they've been involved with. And I'm only about, 10% through this thing because it's pretty technical. And so now you have a group of people that are really interested in this phenomena, and they put on various seminars. Let's see, where is this thing? Trying to get you the irreducible.
You know what? And I'm going to go ahead and link it in the show notes for everybody that wants to go check it out. Okay. So just check the show notes for this book, guys, and we'll make sure that you can check it out. That is awesome. And I mean, any kind of resource like that, we love that stuff. It's fascinating, man. And there are just so many rabbit holes that you can go down. There are so many interesting ways to look at this stuff. And I don't know, from your experience, you've probably gotten the same conclusion I have, that the further you look into it, the more mysterious it becomes. You get more ideas, but less answers. You know what I mean? Exactly.
When you work with a person, and you hear their story, okay, well, the stories, there are similarities to the stories. There are basic similarities, but then it goes off into whole different areas. I was able to speak with Robert Salas, who was the commander of that missile silo that shut down, at Maelstrom. And come to find out that he and his wife are both experiencers.
Really? He was on the National Press Club. I didn't know he was an experiencer himself.
Yeah, he's an experiencer, and he sat down with me at the MUFON symposium in this past August and told me the whole story, which was absolutely fascinating. And they both, as I say, were abducted, and his wife actually became a healer afterwards. She got this ability to heal people afterwards. And, not only are people getting healed by some of these experiences, but also being able to heal. And I have a person that's in the online support group up in Vancouver who is a healer. And I had some back issues. And so we had a couple of sessions, and he's in Vancouver and I'm here in Texas. And I was 100% better after he worked on me from distance.
See, and I mean, how do they do that? Like, people hypnotize over Zoom and stuff like that and send you a little Reiki energy and you feel better. Like, what is going on with this? Is it a placebo thing? Are they tapping into some sort of field where they're able to isolate you, and you've got your focus on them with the intent of receiving healing? They've got the focus on sending healing out that will be received in a positive way. I mean, there are just so many interesting questions about this. And back what you said about got abducted, now I'm a healer. It kind of now lends more to that idea that perhaps there's some spiritual tinkering that's going on, that it's a bigger thing. It's more than just physicality.
Yeah, Brandon, I totally agree with that. I've always said that this is a spiritual journey that these people are on.
Yep.
It may be something that causes a lot of stress, maybe even PTSD in the beginning, but after a while, people come to accept these things. And then in the later stages, when it stops, that people, it's almost like the Stockholm syndrome, where they say, how come we're not coming for me anymore?
Yeah.
And so it's so significant that 70 to 80% of these people do not want to have the experience stop. Only, maybe 20, 25% say, hey, yeah, I it's a bad situation. I want it to stop. And then people say, well, how could that be? How can some people feel positive and other people feel negative about it? A la Bud Hopkins and David Jacobs, it's all negative, and Greer is all positive. Well, it's a combination, folks. I think that we're dealing just as we do here on Earth. We have good people and we have bad people. And I think we got the same thing going on there, even within, particular races, if you will. Like, some people have said that the reptoids are all bad, real badasses. And other people have said they're loving. And, so it's a mixed bag. It's such a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag, but I think it can be quantified. And so the way that that I look at this, and a lot of other folks, is vibration. So even Kathleen Martin will tell you that there's a vibrational nature to being able to witness one of these craft. And I've said it a ton of times, but there'll be two people standing there. One will see a craft, one will not. Well, there are kind of systemic issues or things going on with them that make them stand out or vibrationally resonate at different frequencies. But maybe one could say that this occurs with the observer or the person receiving the information as well. If you've got some sort of predisposition or some sort of vibration in the universe, we know that like attracts like. So you bring forward to you what you're a most vibrational match for. So let's say people like Bud Hopkins, Greer, they attract these lower level entities because that's where their vibration is. And so they're the perfect people to report on this because they have the interest, but also they're attracting a certain type of case, perhaps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. And I think too that there are physical aspects that are, we supposedly have a very narrow band that we can see. Yet maybe some people have a larger band, and so therefore perhaps this vehicle that's out there is vibrating at that frequency, and so this person can see it because he has that bandwidth. I think it still gets even more complicated because of that factor. You add in the physicality of it, and then also the spirituality and the frequency aspects of it. Are you prepared to see something like this? It's like you hear the story about, the Indians seeing these ships of Columbus, and they didn't really see them because they didn't recognize what the hell they were.
Invisible ships. I have heard of this, and this is fascinating. Yeah. Now, some people say it's bullshit. I don't think so. I think you're right on this. I think it is kind of a brainwave thing, and I'm grateful that you brought that up. Good call, man. That's a nice pull. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So let's talk about some hybridization here real quick, because this is an interesting part of the reports. So what do you think's going on with that?
Well, I vacillate back and forth on this thing. And if you listen to what Gary Nolan talks about, when people talk about hybrids, is that we do not have supposedly, in quotes, DNA of an alien. We can't compare anything. So these people that come forward saying that they believe they're a hybrid, there's no way to test that, with these people. If they take their genes and they look at them and, there's not really any difference, from the quote unquote normal people, then it's very difficult to say that they're a hybrid. However, if you're familiar with the book Rachel's Eyes by Helen Luttrell, Rachel's Eyes, you want to find out about hybrids. Rachel, not only she was also in our support group in San Jose, and she was had hypnotherapy by June Steiner, who is the past president of OPUS and is still on the board. Her daughter went to school with a hybrid, and this person definitely looked different and constantly wore a large hat and glasses that covered the eyes. Military people would come to their dorm room. She went to, I believe it was Humboldt College, and delivering food for this person. And it was in liquid form. That's all she would eat. That's all she would eat. And Helen got involved with this one particular military guy. And supposedly went off to a base that was like 90 miles southwest of Ely, Nevada, where a lot of quote unquote hybrid entities were living. And it was a group that was tasked with retrieving, crashed objects. It's a fascinating book. It's a fascinating book. A lot of detail, and so when I think about that, I say to myself, well, maybe there are hybrids,
Well, then it calls into like so many questions. That is a fascinating story, by the way. So many damn questions. Like, so is this a U.S. government program? Do they have some sort of aliens that are entities or something, some physical bodies that they've recovered, which allegedly they do? And then are they undertaking this project themselves, or is this an alien or a non-human intelligence directed operation to where it's the extraterrestrials, as we'll call them just for simplicity's sake, extraterrestrials running the hybridization program? And then, of course, the question is why? Like, is there some sort of terraforming element to it? Do they need to bring the two species together? Is this more elusive to the future humans coming back in time machines kind of a thing, because they have to adjust or, do something fantastical physically to their DNA, but they need us to help with that? All of it just trips me the fuck out, man. I'll be honest with you. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's like it really goes back to the question of, can you trust what the aliens are telling people, which they generally don't tell people a whole lot of anything. There's not you do have cases where people are told, some scientific data, or, the fact that they teach them how to fly a ship. But the whole thing, can we trust what's going on? If they are hybridizing people, what's the purpose of that? And the purpose is that, do they want to eventually take over, our society by creating these hybrids? Or is it self-preservation in some way, shape, or form, that they need to change themselves and are utilizing the combination of our genes and theirs? So, is it a benevolent thing or is it a malevolent thing that is going on? And I don't think we have a definitive answer for that either.
I'm going to say malevolent, just simply because they don't ask you. Like, you don't give consent. If this is something, where you're captured or taken, because that's what it is. I mean, you're basically taken, studied, altered. You come back with junk rashes and all that kind of shit. One of the interesting things is it does, though, as far as if we're looking at it just simply from a motivational standpoint, just outside looking in, if they don't ask you for your permission, then that's it, right? It's not, there's no consent there. You're just being abducted. It's not like we're going on a trip. You're being abducted. You're being taken. So if that's the case, then yeah, that would suck. But perhaps if we go back to the spirituality thing, if they're only taking or messing with your astral body, maybe you made some sort of agreement on the other side. And you've said, okay, I plan to be a part of this hybridization program, or I'm volunteering. It's a box you check, like being a donor on your driver's license now. You choose to be a donor or not. Maybe you could choose to participate in this or not, or maybe everyone gets abducted. Maybe it happens to all of us, and only a certain few remember, and maybe they have certain either skills, attributes, physical things to contribute to being aware that this had even happened to them.
I think I like your last comment there, that all of us have been abducted at one time or another. And, if you go back to the Roper poll that was done back in the early 90s, that back then they talked about 6 million people supposedly having been abducted in the United States. Well, this is a worldwide, phenomena. And can you imagine how many more people have been abducted since then? So if that's the case, they're on a pretty good schedule to hybridize everybody.
I think it is something like this. The more I think about it, the more it's that. It's either that it's a part of you and that we're super spiritual, or yes, it's some sort of prison planet idea to where we're just a resource for them. They can just come take whatever DNA samples, they can breed us, they can make hybrid kids, whatever, and then just shag ass without us even knowing about it, or some people misremembering or not even being able to recall in hypnosis. So what's interesting also is perhaps you were abducted in this life. It's just you don't even remember in hypnosis. There's just like a block there that they won't let you remember. I think it's probably way more ubiquitous than we think, because if they have the ability to do this, then why the hell wouldn't they do it to everyone? Especially if they can pick and choose either screen memories or, people have that all the time. Oh, I saw an owl and then I'm missing 3 hours of time. And then under hypnotic regression, actually, it wasn't an owl. It was a gray. It was this alien or whatever the hell they are. And it's interesting, man, the whole way that this thing plays out. But like you, I'm right there with you. It offers way more questions than answers. So let me ask you this: if you could figure one thing out about the phenomena, what would it be?
Is it? Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. What was rolling off my tongue right away was, is it real? And what does real mean?
Actually, that's a great answer.
What does real mean? I've seen things. I've had a couple of sightings myself. Objects. One night I was sitting in my hot tub in California and looked up and I saw this object. And at first I thought it was a satellite because it was moving along kind of on a steady pace. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And then it zigged one way and then zagged the other way and then took off. So, but it's a dot of light, so you can't make much out of it except that's strange activity, very strange activity. So for me, it is real. It is real, but I think there's obviously aspects of it that are beyond our understanding. The magic, as Arthur C. Clarke says, their technology is such that it looks like magic to us. And being able to go through walls or windows, without opening the window or, putting a hole in the wall. It's just amazing stuff. And I wish I had more answers, but I think that we just need to keep at it and keep talking about it and discovering, more things. That's why that Irreducible Mind book is something that, my God, if you want to, have something by your bedside to, read maybe a chapter, if you can get that far in the chapter, it's amazing stuff that's being said in there. But,
it sounds incredible, and I'm definitely going to pick up a copy, so thank you. And of course, it'll be linked again, guys, down in the show notes, as well as your book, The Unknown Other. Make sure that you go check this thing out. This is fantastic. I keep talking about it because it's amazing. So there's one more thing I want to ask you about, and it is implants. So talk to me about that.
Well, yeah, this is something that a lot of experiencers come back with. That it's a device that Dr. Roger Lear was famous for taking these out. He had 17 patients that he got involved with where they removed these objects. And as a matter of fact, hold on, let me just get to that implant information.
And now this is in your book as well, so I'm just going to, while you're grabbing that, just let folks know that this is in the book. Now, the implants are one of the most interesting part of the phenomena, and I have just so many questions for you about that specifically. It's crazy.
So anyway, the bottom line is that there's no inflammatory or rejection reaction by the body with these things. No visible portal of entry. There's collections of specialized nerve endings surrounding the object. An outer coating of ceramic biological material. Now, that's a very unusual combination. A metallic phase where inorganic metal becomes biological tissue. The emission of radio waves, which are deep space frequencies in the FM band. electromagnetic fields in excess of 10 milligauss, composition of meteoric iron 66, rare earth metals such as U-236, a single isotope of uranium existing by itself, as well as elements such as uridium, which is very rare and hard to find in Earth's crust. Non-terrestrial isotopic ratios indicating the involved elements did not come from Earth. And then he goes on and talks about nanotubes, and this particular patient that had these nanotubes was before nanotubes were invented. Mm-hmm. So, and then gold spheres, and so it's like, how are these things getting there, and why are they there? And so, are they tracking devices? Are they monitoring the person in some way physical? I've heard that they were utilized to check pollution levels. Now, that was a very specific thing as far as a person's body. So, is this a means of controlling a person in some way, shape, or form, or all the above, or all the above?
All the above. Is it just like a piece of the craft that whenever they turn from their astral body back to their physical body, that they just got stuck in there somewhere? It is interesting, though, that they need to monitor and track with a physical object. Now, the properties of these are fascinating. And this is one of the reasons I asked, is because, yes, it could be any of those things, but another thing could be that it's an artifact of that something happened to you. I think this about missing time. So missing time, I feel in my mind, or one of the ideas I've got about it, is that it exists as an artifact to be looked at, as a marker point for maybe somebody not willing to ask the question straight out, or not into UFOs or any of this stuff. Maybe it's like, well, I had 3 hours I can't account for. That's going to burrow its way in your mind, and you are going to have to figure that thing out. Now, I don't think, if they are time travelers, number one, missing time shouldn't be a thing. It's not a thing that's done accidentally, because you don't need to do that. You just take them back at the time that you left, and then that's it. And so the fact that there's missing time, though, again, just like these implants, perhaps could be kind of a marker that something crazy is going on here, and it makes you ask further, because it seems like the phenomena goes from different waves with humanity as a species. It goes as these crazy fairies or lights or something like that, and then now there are objects in the sky that look like craft, that are metal or whatever, solid in form they appear to be. And then there are other things that stair-step into this kind of ideology that keeps mankind invested. We're trying to figure out what the hell's going on here, and these artifacts could be one of it. The I guess intellectual issue I've got with again, something like missing time or implants specifically, is if they can just come scoop your ass up, they can phase you through a wall, they can either time travel or interdimensional travel, why do they have to put a tag on you? Like, it's just odd. It seems like such a low tech way to go about maintaining somebody.
Well, it's interesting because, I've often thought about the fact that, our biologists, marine biologists, go out there and they pull a dolphin out of the water, and they take a blood sample, they tag him, okay, and they throw him back into his environment, and then come back a year later and pull the same one out, and then they check him again. And they keep doing this. They're following this particular dolphin, and I think that it's we're not at the top of the food chain, and so there's a whole plethora of reasons why these aliens are. People have said, well, if they're so smart, they can just take one sample and they got it all figured out. They don't have to come back. They don't have to abduct anybody anymore. Well, the bottom line is I think that there's a younger generation of aliens coming on, and they need to learn. And so they bring them down here, and they start doing the same thing.
I didn't even think of that. It's like teaching your son how to play catch or fish or something like that. All right, son, here's how you abduct a human being, and maybe the bad experiences that they had or when they bungled it. There's a learning curve. He's like, okay, it's all right, son, you'll get him next time. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Damn. That's crazy, dude. Well, I love the hell out of this. I think we'll probably wrap it up here, man, but this is awesome. I could talk to you forever about everything, but let's definitely do this again, man.
Sure.
You're just fascinating as hell, dude. I love this. And your book, of course, The Unknown Other, will be linked down in the show notes, as well as all the ways that OPUS's resources are available. I'm going to go ahead and link all that stuff, as well as the books that we've talked about. So you guys have a lot of links to go down there and explore. Make sure that you get The Unknown Other. Again, this is just one of the definitive books on the topic, and you cover so many wonderful things in a wonderful way in here. Also, the case examples you have from OPUS and other things are fascinating, man. Because there was one in here, I was looking for it whenever we were talking about the aliens actually, or extraterrestrials actually helped them do some crazy stuff. Like, they were very engaging with them. And yeah, let them fly a craft or talk to them, and kind of was patient enough to explain things to them, which I found fascinating. It's very rare that you hear that from these types of encounters.
That's true, absolutely true, and we hope to in the second phase of the Omega-4 study. We're going to go out to the clients of these therapists that have participated in this study. And I will get you a copy of the phase 1 study, prior to our doing another show, because I think you'll find it really interesting.
I am so grateful. Anything you send me is interesting, so please do that. And yes, of course, your Omega studies you do cover in the book. I think you had 1 through 3 in there. But those after that, though, go check this out, guys. So that's why I didn't touch on it. I want y'all guys to go check out the book and to read those, because it's done better in the book than I could have just rattled off to you. So make sure that you check that out. And Lester, I can't thank you enough for your time, dude. This was awesome.
Thank you, Brandon. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and I found this to be fun. And very interesting and informative, because I learned some stuff from you today as well.
And that's what it's all about, brother. It's just a swap of ideas. I think you're an incredible resource for this, because you've talked to so many damn people that have had these from, in this firsthand account. There's nothing like that, because then you can really dip into the psychology. You can, what was going on, and kind of ask about these ancillary phenomena that come about as well. And you're wise enough with the topic. And this is why I love researchers like you, is you don't pigeonhole it into one thing or another. You really are the open-minded kind of person that we need doing this kind of research. So thank you again for everything, dude.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I appreciate it very much.
Of course. Well, we'll do it again soon, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Brandon.
Lester Velez, ladies and gentlemen. All of the ways, of course, to find him will be linked down in the show notes. Make sure that you check out his book, The Unknown Other, and The Existential Proposition of Alien Contact, forward by Linda Moulton Howe. A phenomenal read. It should be on every ufologist. If you're interested in the phenomena at all, check this thing out, because it's great. It's very comprehensive. There's some wonderful case studies in there that he did through OPUS and through his Omega study. So make sure that you'll check that out. So the music that you're listening to right now is Vinny the Saint. Make sure that you check out the links in the show notes for him. He's got some new stuff that he's working on, always coming up with bangers, so go check that out. If you would like to expand your experience with us here on the show, you can do so at expandingrealitypodcast.com. That is where all the links to all socials, Rockfin for our premium stuff, also merchandise. So if you want to get some dope threads, we got some new cool t-shirts up there. We've been working with some artists, and it's awesome. So go check that out, expandingrealitypodcast.com, linked in the show notes. Now, go out into this beautiful place, whatever the hell this thing is, guys, and y'all just pick up a piece of litter, buy somebody in line around you or near you a coffee or a water or a book or a pack of stamps, however they come in a roll or sleeve of stamps, whatever that is. Just do that. Makes a massive difference. The ripple effects ripple out, and it's incredible. So be nice to every animal, entity, lizard person, everybody that you come across. Just a little smile, a little how you doing, something like that. Get out of the left-hand lane, of course, and y'all just go out into this beautiful place, whatever the hell it is, and y'all just be good to one another. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next time.
Grandma, can I have the chocolate chips?
This secret recipe moment made possible by Emory Heart and Vascular Center. When Grandma needed heart care, she came to Emory. The difference? Emory Healthcare performs more heart procedures annually than anyone else in Georgia, which means better outcomes for our patients. And we offer advanced and personalized treatments developed by our top specialists that others don't. Like Grandma knows, where you start your heart care matters. Smart Cookie. EmoryHealthcare.org/smartcookie.
Sometimes during Christmas, something magical happens.
Hey, Cricket customers. The Max with Ads plan is included with the Cricket $60 unlimited plan at no additional cost. And this holiday season, Max is the one to watch when you're feeling festive.
Son of a nutcracker!
Cozy up to all the holiday classics, like Elf, 8-Bit Christmas, and the Harry Potter 8-film collection. Just log in with your Cricket username and password to experience Max on all your favorite devices. Phone plan streams and standard definition. Programming subject to change. Fees, terms, and restrictions apply. See cricketwireless.com for details.